Hello. Let us now find out what is molecular mass and what's formula mass. When atoms combine to form a molecule, they are covalently bound, the atoms are covalently bound to each other, and such molecules, they have an identity of their own and they have fixed masses because the masses of atoms are fixed. Just as if you, in a box, you take 2 apples, 2 bananas, and the masses of apples and bananas are fixed. Let's say the apples are 10 grams each and 100 grams each, and the bananas are also approximately, let us say, 50 grams each. I'm just taking an approximation. Then 100 plus 100 is 200, and 50 plus 50 would be 100. So the total mass of the fruit in the basket would be how much? 300 grams. So it's somewhat similar. In a molecule, whatever atoms are there, atoms of each kind, whatever their number is, if you multiply it by their masses and add all the masses of all the atoms, you get the molecular mass. It's a simple mathematical operation. For example, carbon has a mass of 12.011 U, that is unified mass. Hydrogen has 1.008 U. Therefore, the mass of methane, which the molecular formula is CH4, is 1 into the mass of carbon, because there is only 1 atom of carbon and there are 4 atoms of hydrogen. Therefore, plus 4 into the mass of 1 atom of hydrogen. So that will give you the mass of 4 atoms of hydrogen. Add the 2. So 1 into 12.011 plus 4 into 1.008. If you solve this, the solution is 16.043 U. So that is how we calculate the molecular mass. Now, usually for the sake of calculations, we avoid the decimals and we take the masses to be the main digits, or we round it off to the main digit. And therefore, in the remaining calculations, I will not consider the decimal places. So if we did not consider the decimal places, this mass would have been just 16. This would be 1 into 12 and this would be 4 into 1. So 12 plus 4 is 16. Let us now calculate the mass of water. Hydrogen has a mass of 1 and there are 2 hydrogens. So 2 into 1 plus oxygen, the mass of oxygen is 16. So this will be 16 plus 2 is 18 U, would be the mass of a water molecule. What is the mass of carbon dioxide? Carbon is 12 and there's only 1 carbon. Therefore, there will be 12 plus there are 2 oxygens. So 2 into what is the mass of oxygen? 16. 2 into 16 is 32. 32 plus 12 would be 44. So this would be 44 U. C6H12O6 is glucose. So if we want to find out the mass of glucose, what do? There are 6 carbon atoms. So it is 6 into the mass of carbon is 12. So mass of carbon is 12. 6 into 12 plus 1 into 12, that is hydrogen, plus oxygen is 6 into what's the mass of oxygen? 16. 6 atoms of carbon, each having a mass of 12, plus 12 atoms of hydrogen, each having a mass of 1. I just reversed this order, although it makes numerically no difference, but since we are writing, okay, there are 12 atoms of hydrogen, each having a mass of 1, and there are 6 atoms of oxygen, each having a mass of 16. And when you calculate this, this comes to be 180. Now, this was about the molecular masses which are covalently bound. When you have ionic compounds, do you know ionic compounds do not have any molecules? Ionic compounds are formed when some atoms lose their electrons and some atoms gain those electrons. And the ones that lose electrons become positively charged and the ones that gain electrons become negatively charged, and due to opposite electrical charges, they attract each other. And since they attract each other, they remain together. This is how a crystal lattice is formed. For example, if you take a sodium chloride crystal and you see it, there are no bonds in sodium chloride. But what gives us the formula of sodium chloride, which we commonly write as NaCl? The formula that we give of an ionic compound is actually the ratio between the positive and negative charges. That is, for every the positive and negative charges are always equal, but for the cation and the anion, what is the ratio between the cation and anion? For example, in sodium chloride, the charge on sodium is +1 and chlorine is -1. So for every sodium there should be one chloride. For every sodium ion there should be one chloride ion. Therefore, what's the minimum ratio in the crystal of sodium and chlorine? It is 1 sodium for 1 chlorine. Calcium, on the other hand, calcium would be has a charge of 2 positive and chlorine has a charge of 1 negative. Therefore, the formula for calcium chloride will be, for every 1 calcium there should be 2 chlorines, because for every 2 positive charges there should be 2 negative charges. So the formula of calcium chloride will be CaCl2. That's how the ratio works. But in other words, it is the minimum ratio of cations and anions which gives us the formula of an ionic compound. Therefore, we call them the formula masses and not the molecular masses, because a molecular mass would mean that the atoms in the molecule should be bound to each other. But in a formula, it's just the ratio of the cations to the anions for an ionic compound. So how do you calculate? The method of calculation is the same. We treat them as molecules because all we are concerned about in the masses is only the masses of the atoms or the ions. So in the calculation it's the same, but you should understand that it's not called the molecular mass for ionic compounds. It's called the formula mass because there are no molecules in ionic compounds. So sodium has a mass of 23 and chlorine has a mass of 35.5. So what would be the sum of these two? The sum of these two would be 58.5. So the mass of sodium chloride is 58.5 U. Similarly, if you had copper sulfate. Sulfate is an ion. It's a complex ion if you really look at it. It has got more than one atom. So the entire, and these may be connected to each other by covalent bonds, but sulfate is treated as an ion. On the whole, it acts as an ion. We'll study about that later. But copper has a charge of 2 positive and sulfate ion has a charge of 2 negative. Therefore, their ratio is 1:1. But sulfate consists of 1 sulfur atom and 4 oxygen atoms. So when we find out the mass, we have to find out the total of all the atoms present. So copper has a mass of 64, sulfur is 32, both are 1 into 1, sorry, the method should have been the same, 1 into 23 and this would be 1 into 35. So this should be 1 into 64 plus 32 should again be 1 into 32, just to make it clear that we multiply the number of atoms by the mass of the atom. Sulfur is 32 plus, there are 4 oxygens, so 4 into what's the mass of oxygen? It is 16, right? So this is 64, this comes to be 32 and this also comes to be 64. Alright, so the mass of copper sulfate would be 160 unified masses or atomic mass units. So this was molecular mass and formula mass. What is the difference between the two? Please do refer to my other videos where I have been doing about the atomic masses and the relative atomic masses. And what did we do yesterday? The average atomic masses. So atomic mass, average atomic mass, we've already done. We've done the Dalton's atomic theory, and now in the next video we'll be doing the mole concept. Thank you for watching. Keep returning to my channel.